In this lesson, we are going to be talking about equivalent fractions and decimals. So we're going to talk about what that is. Equivalent means they're essentially the same thing. So like 1/2 and 2/4 are they're really the same value. They just look different. So we're looking to write an equivalent fraction with different denominators. Okay, so we want to change 5/8 to an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 32. So we want to keep it proportional. It's kind of a big thing. So to do that, we'll take 5/8 and we want it to equal something over 32. Okay, so to keep this thing proportional, we're going to change the bottom, or we're going to look at how the bottom would change to get from here to here. So in order to do this, we need to multiply top and bottom by the same thing. Okay, when we multiply the top and bottom by the same thing, it's like we're multiplying by 1. And so I'll show that. So if we're going to go from 8 to 32, we would multiply that by 4. Now, if we're going to keep this equivalent, that means we're going to be multiplying the top by 4 as well, which would get you a 20. So the reason that I know that this is the same thing, you could test it by plugging this in the calculator, dividing 20 by 32, get a decimal, divide 5 by 8, get a decimal, they should match. But if you look at what we multiplied by, and you look at this as a fraction, 4 over 4 is 1. So we're really multiplying by 1. So as far as the value goes, that's exactly the same because we multiplied by 1. But as far as the fraction look of it, it looks different, but it's not. All right. So that holds true whether you're going to multiply something or if you're going to reduce, that means you're going to divide both pieces by the same thing. Okay, we're looking for a common factor that we can divide out of both. So if we have 8 over 10, we're looking for what is a common factor that we can divide both of them by. So we can divide by 2. They both are divisible by 2. And so that's going to be 4 over 5. All right. And so it's kind of an unwritten rule in math that whatever fraction you have, you always want to write it in its lowest terms. You want to simplify. Okay. And so the same thing kind of holds true. Here's the answer to it. That if, again, you make this a fraction, you kind of analyze what it is that you divided by, you really divided by 1. All right. And then we'll do one last on this. So we have 18 over 24. Now, ideally, we're going to try to figure out what's the greatest common factor that you can divide out, but maybe you don't see it. So let me show you a different approach. That let's say we just kind of pick at it. I'm looking at both of these and they're both even. So if they're both even, I can divide both of them by 2. So that'll get you a 9 over 24. That doesn't mean that you're done. So I still have a number that I can divide both of them by. That would be 3. Both divisible by 3. And that is 3 over 4. All right, and now there's nothing else we can divide by, so we're done. Now, if I put these two values together, the 2 and the 3, that makes 6. If you multiply them together, all that means is that your greatest common factor actually was a 6 that you could have divided both. Now, some people will see it, some people won't. It doesn't matter if you want to pick at it, you can still get to the exact same result. Okay. All right. So now we're going to write improper fractions. An improper fraction is when the top number is larger than the bottom number. Okay, the numerator is bigger than the denominator. It's known as an improper fraction. We're going to write it as a whole number or a mixed number. So a fraction is a division problem. So I basically, if I want to try to rewrite this, I want to look to see how many times 3 goes into 15. All right. And sometimes that's going to go in evenly, sometimes it's not. And so that's what they mean by you might get a whole number because it goes in evenly, or you might have to get a mixed number where you'll get a whole number with a fraction because you have something left over. So we're going to take 15 divided by 3. All right, and let me kind of write this out the long way for a second. It's going to be 3 is going into 15. Now, not all of you need to do this by any means. I'm just kind of showing here's the math that's actually happening. 3 goes into 15 5 times, multiply it and subtract it. All right, so we have no remainder. It's going to go into it evenly. So 15 divided by 3 is going to be 5. Okay, so it ends up being a whole number on that one. This one, you're looking at taking 28 and dividing it by 8. So some of you can mentally say, how many times does 8 go into 28 without going over? But if you can't do that mentally, no problem. We'll do this. So 8 is going to go into 28. We can get a 24 here is as close as we can get. So that's 3. All right, and then we subtract that out. It doesn't go in evenly. We're going to have a remainder. Okay, so how do we write that? So what that means is that 8 goes into 28 3 times with 4 left over. So it turns into 4 8s. All right, and then we can simplify that. So that gets us 4 goes into both. It becomes 1/2. Okay. Now, it might be easier, maybe, and again, there's lots of different ways to do this, but you get the exact same result in the end, is the fact that these are both even. You could simplify it right from the start, and then that might make your division a little bit, and the numbers might be a little smaller. So if you simplified that right away, maybe you took a 2 out of both, and so that became 14 over 4. You can divide another 2 out of it, and that becomes 7 over 2. And then you're still doing the same math of how many times does 2 go into 7? It goes into it 3 times, which is 6. And then if we take 6 away, we have 1 left over. Okay, so lots of different ways to do it. All right, so next thing is we are writing the whole number or mixed number as an improper fraction. So we're going to go from this look to something more like this look. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, you're basically undoing what we just did. So in order to do 6 2/3, the math to this is, how do we get 7 over 2? We would take the 2 times the 3 plus the 1. So that's always how you go from a mixed number to an improper. Denominator times your whole number. That's a 6 plus the 1. So we're going to do that here. We're going to take the denominator times the 6 plus the numerator. And that gets you your new top. All right, so if we do that math, we got 18 plus 2, which is 20. So then our fraction, our new numerator is 20. And if you want to double check it, how many times does 3 go into 20? It would go into it 6 times, which is 18. And we take the 18 out, and we would be left with 2. Okay. And then, all right, so then we're going to be writing decimals as fractions and fractions as decimals. All right, so if we want to do that, how do we write a fraction as a decimal as a fraction? Well, to do the decimal thing, it's really you want to know what the names of things are. So like right here, this is the 10ths place value because you're 1 decimal in. So you are in the 10ths. And so actually what that means is that you have 4 tenths. So if you know exactly the name of the last digit, then it's going to be whatever that number is over the name. Okay, and then we just simplify down the 4 tenths. So that becomes 2/5. All right. Now this one, this is tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Okay, so since your last digit is in the thousandths, we are going to have 75 over 1,000. Okay, and then we're asked to simplify. But let me kind of walk through how we can do this, and then I'll show you the calculator can help our cause quite a bit. Let's just jump into the calculator. So we could pick at it. We can divide by 5. We might be able to divide. So maybe some of us look at it and go, hey, 25 goes into both. But let me show you the calculator version part of this is if we have a fraction, we take 75 divided by 1,000. Okay, now that's not what I wanted. Right? That puts us back to our decimal. So what I can do on the calculator, which is really nice, and we do this all the time, is if you press your math button, the very next thing that you do, don't do any other operation, press your math. That very first thing is going to convert, is what that means. It's going to take the decimal that you just have and convert it into a fraction. But it's going to convert it into the fraction in its lowest terms. So it's not going to give you 75 over 1,000. It's going to give you the simplified version of it, 3 over 40. And that's it. So it's 2 steps. You're going to have to divide out your fraction, turns it into a decimal, press your math button, math frac, basically, and then that's going to get you your fraction in its lowest terms. All right. And then one last is we're going to have a mixed number here, actually. So it's not the 3 that I'm trying to figure out. I already know that the 3 is going to be the 3. It's the 0.17, this piece. So that is tenths, hundredths. So if you are in the hundredths, you are looking at 17 hundredths. All right. And you can test that out, see if it simplifies. If you go 17 divided by 100, you get an answer, and then you can press math, frac. It doesn't simplify because nothing goes into 17, and 17 definitely does not go into 100. Okay, so that is your mixed fraction. Okay, and then we'll make another video for the rest.